What's up, y'all? You're listening to the Extra Point College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Carnes, joined as always by my co-host, Daniel Hammock. Daniel, it is time for the division formerly known as the Pac-12 North, as the Pac-12 has eliminated divisions this year, but since the schedules are very much division aligned, we're going to do it still by division. Easiest way to do it to break up the Pac-12 into two. So we will be doing the Pac-12 North teams formerly, as the Pac-12 again has eliminated divisions for this season. But so we'll talk about Oregon, Washington, Oregon State, Cal, Washington State, and Stanford in that order, in order of win totals. But Daniel, Pac-12 means we're almost done with our season preview, so we're getting close.
Yeah, this is a fun time. The Big Ten was fun. They're obviously a major conference. The Pac-12, I feel like we've got a couple teams that we really have, some discerning to do about this year. So definitely some good games to talk about, some good players. So excited to dive in and kind of see where this goes.
As am I. Let's start with the Ducks of Oregon. So Mario Cristobal out. He leaves for Miami. Dan Lanning in, coming over from Georgia. Now they get to play Georgia in their opening game in Atlanta. That'll be a fun one. But Oregon, their win total set at 9. Looking like Oregon should not drop off from where they've been based on their win total. But where are you going with the Ducks, Daniel?
Yeah, this is a very talented team, talent-rich roster. Dan Lanning, I think, was a smart hire as far as making sure they can kind of maintain a recruiting prowess, especially on the West Coast out there. Kind of looking through the team itself, I mean, you turn all 5 offensive linemen, and Alex Forsyth, the center, he's thought to be an All-American. He's all-conference. He's going to be one of their major draft eligible players on that offensive line, along with guard TJ Bass and the right tackle. I'm not even going to try the last name. Those guys are all great. Bo Nix transfers in, so kind of at quarterback. He former 5-star, kind of up and down career. I think he's slowly declined since his freshman year. But I think it has to do a lot with his coordinators not having continuity, and he actually is following a former coordinator. Kenny Dillingham is the offensive coordinator, so he's reunited with him, and it was actually for his best season, which was his freshman year. So I do think that's going to make a difference. I also am still high on Ty Thompson, so if the Knicks experience doesn't really work out like they want, they've got a great guy to turn to in Ty Thompson. I think that he actually raises the ceiling for what Oregon is about. Defensively, I mean, you have the best linebacker in the country, in my opinion, in Noah Sewell, and Justin Flo is a former 5-star who has had injuries in the past, but he should be an all-conference linebacker this year, we would expect. So you're looking at those two on the inside. Both of them were recruited by Dan Lanning at Georgia. So add to that relationship's already there. Dante Manning, a former 5-star, is stepping into a starting role at corner. He was injured last year for part of the year. And then Christian Gonzalez transferring in from Colorado at corner. So you're getting, a jolt of life from a, in-conference transfer there. I do think they're going to be a very steady team. Something else I wanted to mention was Tosh Lupoi is coming a defensive coordinator. That tells me 2 things. That tells me that I think Dan Lanning is going to be very involved in calling this defense, and they're going to be all about recruiting. So as far as from program standpoint, I think they're in great footing regardless of what the Pac-12 is doing as a conference. Now, we're doing over-unders, and they've got a 9-win total, and they have Georgia on their schedule. So looking at the schedule, I'm going through, and the only other losable games I have are, I guess you could well, no, I'm just going to say the two that I feel are most losable are Utah at home and at Oregon State. Yes, they play Washington. Yes, they play BYU. Those are going to be tough ball games. Um, as far as they're not just going to run through them, I guess. But I think that they're only losing 2 games. I think they're going to split Utah and at Oregon State. That's where their other loss comes from, and I think they're going to lose that opener to Georgia. So I've got them at 10-2. I am going over. I like this team because if Bo Nix is starting, I think that he will have had to have earned it over Ty Thompson because again, they're coming in on an even playing field with a new coach. So that's important. And then if Ty Thompson wins, then I think he beats a competent multi-year SEC starter in Bo Nix. So they're in a good pace.
So as far as quarterbacks go with Oregon, I am with you, and I was high on Ty Thompson. I am less high on him, and maybe he's the same, and Nick just grabbed the job by the throat. But I was surprised at how quickly the reports came out that Bo Nix transferred, and it was just like immediately he grabbed the job by the throat, and he is just their starter. Like he beat out Ty Thompson, who's been there full 2 seasons, and just beat him out fair and square. And so I'm like disappointed that Thompson didn't push him at all because the reports were just like, it's a done deal. It's Nick's. Like he is their starter. So I want to believe in Ty Thompson. So I'm with you. I think the floor is higher because you bring in a multi-year SEC starter. Like you mentioned, he's with his offensive coordinator where he had his best season in 2019 and Kenny Dillingham. Of course, Kenny Dillingham coming over from Florida State where, hey, he's also had to work with some quarterbacks who, like, honestly, are they as good as Nick's? Maybe Jordan Travis is, but like he's been messing around with people. Like, he's been having to develop some potential in some players. Hasn't really had a solid quarterback. Does Bo Nix live up to his 5-star name? If he does, I think Oregon could tear through this schedule because the defense is going to be phenomenal. The offensive line is going to be the best in the Pac-12. So again, outside of that Georgia game, what games scare you? I mean, you mentioned, Daniel, that the defense, their defensive line and offensive line, Mario Cristobal is recruited very well. They're going to have one of the best linebacking cores, not just in the Pac-12, but in the country. Like you said, Noah Sewell, I mean, even since you mentioned it, I mean, he will be on our All-America team. We come up with that
sure.
later on in the year. He'll be a starter at linebacker. Byron Caldwell, they do lose Travis Dye to USC, but Byron Caldwell, he did a good job running the ball last year behind this offensive line. Their receivers are experienced, so they haven't played with Nix as of note, but experienced at receiver. Daniel, like you said, I'm looking at the schedule. So I actually have some potential point spreads here. There is only 2 games that I think they will not be favored in, and that is the Utah game, which I think will be around a pick 'em, and then the Georgia game, they're going to be a 2-touchdown plus dog in that game. And then outside of that, they have 3 other potential like 1-score point spread. That's BYU, UCLA, and Oregon State. And 2 of those 3 are at home, and the Utah game is at home. So this schedule, I mean, even Washington, I have right now as a 12-point favorite over Washington. And that's in that game also at home. So this schedule lines up really, really well for Oregon to, I mean, have double-digit wins in year 1 under Dan Lanning. And that's why I think the win total is so high, despite having Georgia on the schedule. But I'm with you, Daniel. I'm going 10-2, 7-1 in conference. I think they lose that Georgia game. I'm with you. I think they lose one of Utah, UCLA, Oregon State. I think they win the other 2. So I think they go 2-3 or 2-1 in those games, 2 out of 3, excuse me. And I'm with you. Going over 10-2 for the Ducks. All right, let's go to Seattle. So another head coaching change in Washington. So Kalen DeBoer comes over from Fresno State. A 4-8 season for Washington last year. Very disappointing for the Huskies. Their win total now set at 7.5. So where are you going with the Huskies, Daniel?
Yeah, this is I think 7.5 is a great number for this team under a new head coach, a proud program, but, definitely a program in transition. Looking at the schedule, they should be able to take care of, Kent State, Portland State as far as their out of conference, but they do get Michigan State. Michigan State's coming to them, but I already said in the in our Big Ten predictions that I do expect Michigan State to come in and win that game. So that's one loss. Kind of going through the schedule, I think that they are upper half of the league, but I'm not sure. Looking through this team, they've got 5 returning starters on offense, 3 on defense. They do have Michael Penix Jr. transferring in from Indiana. Now, he had his moments. There were times where he looked like Superman. Obviously, the Penn State game in 2020, where that was just like the height of the hype. I think he's a solid player. I think he's a good. I think he can help them to win some games, but I don't think they'll necessarily win because of him. They returned their top 2 pass catchers from last year in Rome Odunze and then Jalen McMillan. So I think that's important just as far as the offense being more mature in general. But as I look, I'm gonna go under. I think 7-5 is a little more likely than 8-4. I can just pick out too many losses on this schedule. So they play at Oregon. I already have them losing to Michigan State. UCLA, they're playing at UCLA, at Cal. So a lot of these I'm kind of running into, hey, I don't feel comfortable at 8-4. Give me 7-5. So under 7.5.
I am going to join you on the under. So I'm going 7-5 as well. But I think that is a phenomenal year one, given where this team was last year. So for Michael Penix, someone who coming off of a couple of injuries should be fully healthy now, he needs an offense like Kalen DeBoer's offense. I mean, this is an offense that ranked top 25 in SP Plus last year when he was at Fresno State. So even at Fresno State, putting up a top 25 offense in college football, impressive. Now he's at Washington, and teams typically do this. They had a defensive-minded head coach, Jimmy Lake. The pendulum has swung. The offense was terrible. So they bring in an offensive-minded head coach and Kalen DeBoer, who had a very successful offense at the Group of 5 level. If there's a coach who can help him, Michael Penix, that is, this is the coach that can kind of help groom a quarterback, right? Like Jake Haener looked really, really good at Fresno State last year. I thought he might transfer to Washington. He entered the transfer portal, decided to go back to Fresno State. But all that being said,
he started
Michael
at
Penix,
Washington, right? That was his original school. Jake
I didn't
Haener.
remember that. Was it really?
He was behind Jacob Eason, and once Jacob Eason won the job, I believe that Haener transferred.
There you go. I didn't even know that. Their receivers, similar to Oregon, they return all their receivers this year. So there will be a strength on offense. That'll be it. Offensive line is very questionable. Defensive line is not, though. This is the defensive line that should be among the best in the conference for Washington. But I'm with you in that the schedule is tough. When you get Michigan State out of conference, out of the South, you do draw UCLA and the Arizona schools. We'll see how the Arizona schools are. Don't count out one of them. I'm buying a little hype there, which we'll talk about next week. You go on the road to Oregon and on the road to your rival against Washington State, which I think that rivalry will be more even now. Both schools both schools in a year one. So I don't think the schedule is too tough to have a giant turnaround in year one. I just think they're going to struggle just enough against some of these teams. I mean, I think they're losing to Michigan State. To go 5-4 in conference, I think is still a great year one considering where they were last year. But so going under the win total, I think the offense can be pretty bad still in year one. I mean, the defense might be a top 30 defense in college football. The offense might be a top 80 offense in college football. So going under 7-5 for the Huskies. All right, Daniel, let's go to the other side of Oregon. Let's go to Corvallis, where, hey, Jonathan Smith, a guy I've been high on. Oregon State Beavers, their win total set at 6. So he's in his 5th year at his alma mater. Where are you going with the Beavers?
Yeah, this one's interesting because they are returning 5 on offense, returning 8 on defense, and they just went 7-5 last year in the regular season. So 7-6, their win total is right at 7. So 7 wins will be a push.
Or six wins. for
Oh,
Oregon
there's a
State.
6.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's good. Because I like them at 7. So I've got them over. They do have tough, draw from the South, if we're still calling it that. But they play USC at home and they go to Utah. So that's tough in and of itself. They do get Oregon at home at the end of the year for Civil War or whatever it's called now. But Boise State and at Fresno State are no cakewalk. But as I'm counting up losses, I feel confident that they are only going to lose 5 at the most. So I like 7 and 5. I'm going over. Chance Nolan, solid quarterback, had a pretty good year last year. I think he can improve on that under Jonathan Smith. He returns 3 of his top 5 or 3 of his top 4 receivers from last year. They will have to find a way to replace BJ Baylor at running back. He had 1,300 yards and 13 touchdowns. So that will be, tough to do, but I do think they'll have a solid year going over with 7 wins.
I was counting. So they're going to be a dog in, it looks like 5 games, I'm thinking. Let's see where we are. And then you got a couple 1-score games either way. I mean, this is why it's a 6-6, right? Like they're going to be a favorite in some. They'll be a 1-score, within 3 points in some. They're going to be a 1-score dog in some. Fresno State is no joke at Fresno State. I think there'll be a touchdown underdog in that game. Like Fresno State returns a lot of people despite losing their head coach. That being said, Daniel, for a few years now, I've just bought the Beavers, right? Like
you have a lot of stock in them as of right now.
I mean, I like looking at trends. He has doubled their win total. He did it for 3 years in a row. Now, was that doubling it from 1 to 2 in the first year? Yes, it was. But then he doubled it from 2 to 5, over doubled it. COVID year, we're going to throw out from 5 to 7 wins. So 2019 at 5 wins, 2021 at 7 wins. I think they take one more step forward this year. I'm going to say they go to 8 wins this year. So Chance Nolan's a great quarterback. I do think Jonathan Smith's a great coach for quarterbacks, but this will be an offensive led team, but I think where they're going to be successful, Daniel, is their secondary is really good. So Alex Austin, he's one of their corners. He's a lockdown corner that they've got. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his first name, but Mr. Wright at their other corner, they're going to have one of the best defensive backfields in the Pac-12. They have a good offensive line. Chance Nolan's a great quarterback. This is a team that I think is going to pull a couple of upsets this year and get to 8 wins. So I like where they're at, especially stability-wise. You got to think in the division where everyone else is. You have 3 first-year head coaches head coaches in your division. You have a struggling Stanford. You've got Cal who's still trying to figure things out. So Oregon State, one of the most consistent programs. Can they beat Oregon? That's this hill they need to get over too, is can they upset Oregon? And I think this is going to be one of their best shots, right? Like you got Oregon a little bit vulnerable, at least coaching staff wise. So I like Oregon State. I'm going to keep buying my stock and I'm going to go for 8 wins this fall. All right, Daniel, let's go to Berkeley. Let's go to Cal. Justin Wilcox in his 6th year, believe it or not, with the Golden Bears. So their win total set at 5.5. Where are you going with Cal?
Yes. So with Cal, looking through just what they have coming back, I mean, 3 starters on offense, 4 on defense. They do return their top tackle guy and Daniel Scott, who, he's their safety. He's been kind of that leader in the secondary. And, this is, big defensive team. I'm curious if they're going to be able to keep that going. They do replace a lot of the starters from last year with some more juniors and seniors. That's been a product of the 6-year, rule. With COVID, they've been able to hang on to guys longer. And so just by result, a lot of these teams that take development like Cal have been able to develop guys as in backup roles. So I am looking forward to seeing what they do defensively as a whole. Now, offensively, that looks like Jack Plummer is going to be the starter. This will be it'll be a new starter. Looking through their schedule, we're at how many wins is it?
5.5.
5.5. Okay, so are they going bowling? They play at Notre Dame. They play USC and UCLA from the South.
Yeah, and
Arizona. So not a terrible draw there. I'm gonna go over. I think they get 6 wins. So give me them at 6-6.
I'm with you. I'm with you at 6-6. I'm going over. Here's the thing: this defense can be pretty good. This defense can be a top 40 unit in college football. You highlighted Daniel Scott. I highlight Brett Johnson, sophomore at defensive line. He's really big. I like what he brings. Jack Plummer coming over from Purdue last year. Now, this is the guy who got beat out by Aiden O'Connell, but still has some starting experience in the Big Ten. Daniel, I think the offense can be pretty bad. So returning production, they rank 126th out of 131 teams on offense. So not great on offense. But defense, they rank top 40. And SP Plus numbers have them as a top 40 defensive unit this year. Wilcox is a defensive guy. So then I look at their schedule and I'm like, what teams can actually like threaten their defense or their offense will not be able to keep up? So who has offense that can light up the scoreboard? And unfortunately, out of the South, you got probably the 2 best offenses. Well, Utah maybe, but 2 of the 3 best offenses out of the South was your schedule draw with USC and UCLA. I think Oregon can challenge you. I think Oregon State can challenge you. Notre Dame obviously is going to challenge you. Washington State, I think, is going to be able to challenge you on offense. So that gets me to 6-6. So I think there are 6 teams that their defense is going to be good enough that their offense won't have to do a lot to win games. And I think there's 6 teams where their offense is going to have to do stuff and don't know if they'll be able to. So 6-6 splits that schedule. And that sounds about right for a team that could have a top 40 defense and like a bottom 40 offense is splitting the schedule and going 6-6. Right. So I'm right with you with Cal, 6-6 for the Golden Bears. Daniel, let's go to Washington State, another team with a new head coach. So Jake Dickert comes in first year, excuse me. I guess he started last year technically, but first full year as a head coach. Here right? Or did he start last year?
He only had 6 games last year, so he's 3-3.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
So Jake Dickert comes in, really a reset for Washington State, dealing with all the off the field crap last year. But the Cougars went total set at 5, so Vegas not having a ton of hopes for Washington State. But where do you see the Cougars?
Yeah, I'm interested to see what Dickert's got for them at quarterback, as a head coach. Obviously, they go 3-3 last year under him, but he didn't really get to implement his style. It was more just like fill in for Rolovich and see what you can do. Now he's going to have his all off season and everything to get the ball rolling. I'm interested to see his DNA, his stamp that he puts on the program. Bringing in Cameron Ward, the incarnate word transfer, who actually has a Heisman odds. He has 4,700 yards last year, 47 touchdowns. I mean, he had a big season last year. I'm interested to see what he can bring. Nakia Watson at running back, I think that he's going to be something special as well. Looking through this roster, though, I mean, 5 returning on offense, 6 on defense. They do return their leading sack guy, Ron Stone Jr. He had 5 sacks last year. This isn't a great team. I don't think they're going to. I don't think they're going to go through and just like win a bunch of games in the Pac-12. So for me, they'd have to rely on, maybe some easy layups in the non-conference. I'm looking at their schedule. They play Idaho. I think they can win that game. And they better because it's a home game and it's their first game. Then they play at Wisconsin, and then playing Colorado State. I think that's kind of on their level. So that's a good aptitude test for them. It's at home, but then as I go through the schedule within the Pac-12, obviously they draw Utah and USC and the Arizona schools. I'm going to go under. I don't think that they eclipse. I guess, are they at 5 wins?
Yeah, they're at 5.
Okay, yeah, I think 4-8 is probably the most likely for them this season, and so um, just kind of going through win by win. I would be at best. I guess I could say push. I like 4-8, 5-7. Now I'll stay at 4-8. They're under. I'm going to stay under, but yeah, I think 4 wins is more likely than 6 wins. If I was having to do an over under straight up, I know I can say 5 wins, but I'm going to stick with 4 wins. 4-8 for the Cougars.
So, Daniel, this is a team that the strength should be the defense this year. Again, top 40 in returning production, top 50 unit this year. You get a full off season with this coaching staff, which is a new coaching staff, including, and here's where I'm buying some hype. Not only do you bring in Cameron Ward from Incarnate Word, who threw for 4,600 yards at 65% completion percentage, 47-10 in his TD to interception ratio, but they brought his head coach as their offensive coordinator, Eric Moss.
I didn't know that. That's pretty good.
He was the head coach in Incarnate Word. Goodness, Ward.
Ward and Word. Like, what were they thinking?
Right. And he comes over to be the offensive coordinator. So, Daniel, the numbers tell me this offense shouldn't be very good. I'm going to buy a little bit of this. What if he lights it up? Because those would be Heisman numbers, like what he did at the FCS level.
Absolutely.
Not saying that's going to translate to FBS. We'll see. But you're in the Pac-12. How many defenses you're going to face that are really going to scare you that you can't implement a fun offense with a quarterback who, to quote Jameis Winston, can toss that thing. So I'm going to buy a little bit of the hype and say the offense is ahead of schedule. Mm-hmm. So I just like this story of you bring in the head coach and the quarterback who lights up the FCS. And then
that's very cool.
You're in the Pac-12. You're not going to the SEC West and saying good luck. Like, you're in the Pac-12 North too, which is the weaker of the two divisions. So I'm going to go over. I'm going to say 7-5. So schedule-wise, they
7
do draw
5. Okay.
Utah and USC out of the South. I don't think those are winnable games, but as far as in-division games, I mean, you get Oregon, Cal, and Washington all at home. You do get to Oregon State, but I think they pull a couple upsets, and I'm going to go 7-5, purely banking on these transfers work in year one. Because I think for some of these teams, you have, like, with the way the transfer portal works now, Michigan State's a great example last year, where for some teams, it will click immediately, and they're going to overachieve. I'm betting on Washington State being one of these teams. There's no skill in that. You just got to try to align some stuff, and I'm aligning this coach and quarterback coming together. I think that'll be fun. So find that storyline. There are other transfers click this year too. 7-5 for Washington State. Lastly, Stanford. The Cardinals sitting with a 4.5 win total from Vegas. Believe it or not, David Shaw's 12th year here at Stanford. 3-9 last year. Does he turn it around, Daniel?
I mean, he returns 10 starters on offense, so you'd hope that something is going to go their way. Tanner McKee, back as a starting quarterback, had a okay year last year, a good year as far as 15 touchdowns and 7 picks. So nothing, groundbreaking or anything, but you returned 4 of your top 5 pass catchers from last year. Return your top 2 tacklers, your top sack guy. Now, granted, your top sack guy had 3 sacks. So, how much, it's great to have returners, guys that are coming back, but they have to be good. Going through the schedule, getting USC from the South, playing at Notre Dame like they do, they play Notre Dame every year. Having BYU on the schedule, having at Utah. I'm trying to count the wins. That's probably what I should be doing. Colgate, so they're playing some toothpaste to start with. I think they could take down Colgate. I think they could mess around. I think they can mess around and get 2 to 3 more wins on this schedule. I'm not sold on either Arizona school right now, but I'll say this. Most of these schools on their schedule are circling them as either a win outright, or if it's a peer, they're circling it as, hey, we have to win this game because we've got this other rough stretch coming up. So I know David Shaw gets thrown in there with all these great coaches. I think that he had a good run there. I don't know if he can turn it back around from what it was. So I'm going to say under, because it's 4.5, right?
4.5, yep.
So I can get 4 wins and still be under. I'm going to do it under 4-8.
I'm going to ride the coattails of Barton Simmons, who in 2019, first show we did the podcast, was fully out on Stanford in this new era of college football. And
friend of the show, by the way. Friend of the show.
Friend of the show. So the offense had already taken a downturn by that point, but the early signing period has hurt Stanford. In 2016, their recruiting class ranked 16th. In 2017, it ranked 14th. Early signing period starts in 2018. Since then, they've gone 40th, 21st, 22nd, 48th. So they're not recruiting at the clip they once were, which has hurt them because of admission stuff with the school. The early signing period did not help them out, right? That's why David Shaw has been very vocally against the early signing period and regulations around this because he knew it was going to hurt his program. But also, they've been terrible, Daniel. They did not modernize when they needed to. He's apparently said they're going to run a more air raid style offense, which when Stanford's been at its best, it's been power football. That hasn't worked. Will this work? You've got a quarterback who can do it. I mean, he's got a lot of NFL draft stock at this point. I think that's really based on, size and how hard he can throw the ball.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's got that Will Levis stock. But Will Levis probably better though. So Daniel, this is just a team that, you mentioned 10 starters coming back, but on an offense that ranked 105th in the country, does that matter? Like it's the whole, does it matter how many starters you have coming back if your starters were terrible last year? If they stink, they could improve an offense. I think quarterback alone, they could improve, but I mean, I'm going under. I'm going 3-9. What also hurts them is out of conference, you play Notre Dame and BYU, who are both significantly better than you. They play one of the tougher schedules in the country, especially for Stanford. So it doesn't line up well for them. I'm going 3-9. I do think they get a couple of wins in conference because, again, I think they're not head and shoulders beneath everyone, especially in their division.
Right.
There's some peers that I think
it's still the Pac-12.
Still the Pac-12, but I don't think you're beating BYU or USC. So 3-9. I have a very, very hard time getting, especially if the over-under is at 4.5. I'm not getting the 5. Like, obviously, I think 3-9 is way more likely than 5-7, and that way 4-8 is way, way more likely than 5-7. So I'm going 3-9. I'm with you on the under. Sorry, Stanford. Hey, that wraps up the Pac-12 North. We're going to post our predictions on our social media, which you can follow at the Extra Point Pod on Instagram and Facebook. You can follow Daniel on Twitter at Deep South Daniel. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Barnes with a K. And that will do it for this edition of the Extra Point. He is Daniel.